Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a remarkably vivid, ancient, apocalyptic vision. We're going to unpack the complex and striking themes of preservation and punishment found within the source text, the prophecy of Noah and the fiery waters. If you're fascinated by ancient texts and how they structure their narratives of cosmic justice, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to break down this intricate vision step by step, so we can truly grasp the mechanics of this ancient judgment.
Right off the bat, rather than starting gently, this text just plunges us into a totally visceral underworld. We're talking molten metals and wild temperature shifts. With a great shaking of the waters, an odor of sulfur and rivers of fire, it paints this terrifying sensory picture of cosmic justice. But hey, to truly wrap our heads around the scale of this fiery devastation, we actually need to pause and look at what is being saved first.
Which brings us to Section 1, the seed of life, and the concept of divine preservation.
So, we start with a direct communication from the divine. The Lord assures Noah that his blameless character, his life of love and rectitude, has granted him some profound divine favor. It says his portion has ascended, which basically means his moral standing has been officially recognized at the highest cosmic level. This sets up a crucial baseline for us. Amidst all the impending chaos we're about to look at, absolute righteousness is seen and it is protected.
And as a direct result of that favor, we learn that angels are actively at work constructing a wooden building. Yep, the ark. But it's not just some standard physical structure. The text specifically notes that God promises to personally protect it, saying he'll literally lift up his own hands upon it. So the construction of this wooden building is a literal, divine safe haven engineered specifically to weather the storm.
The text actually lays out a very specific, multi-step divine promise tied to this structure. This wooden sanctuary guarantees that the seed of life will survive. Its main job, preventing a totally empty earth after the judgment has passed. But, it goes way beyond just mere survival. God promises to strengthen this seed for all eternity and eventually scatter it to replenish a desolate earth. It's really the ultimate promise of a total reset and renewal.
All right, let's shift gears to Section 2, the Valley of Flaming Metal, where we meet the unjust angels.
Now, what is absolutely fascinating here is how earthly, tangible materials melt down to create a literal landscape of destruction to punish the fallen. The text specifically calls out these mountains in the west made of gold, silver, iron, soft metal, and zinc. Think about that. These aren't abstract mystical concepts, right? These are the heavy, hard elements of the earth itself, serving as the actual foundation for a supernatural prison.
And this landscape? It is definitely not static. The text describes this violent shaking that just rocks the valley. It's a massive seismic event that mixes the flowing molten metal from those mountains right in with the underground waters. Just imagine that catastrophic reaction for a second. Out of the shaking, at that exact place, emerges an overpowering, pungent odor of sulfur, uniting with the waters. It is an incredibly vivid chemical and geological reaction, but happening on a massive cosmic scale.
So, this terrifying elemental reaction actually ignites rivers of fire flowing under the earth, and these subterranean rivers serve a highly specific, permanent function. They are the exact mechanism used to condemn and enclose those angels who led humanity astray. The earth itself has literally been transformed into a fiery furnace of accountability for these cosmic beings.
Okay, so we've seen the elaborate punishment for the unjust angels, but this brings us to a really crucial pivot in our explainer. We're going to shift our focus from those cosmic beings to the earthly kings. If the angels are facing rivers of fire, how exactly does this apocalyptic vision deal with the humans who held all the power on earth?
Let's dive into Section 3, the judgment of the powerful, focusing on those earthly kings.
This part brilliantly illustrates the bizarre dual nature of their punishment. The text describes this incredible paradox. On one side, for these powerful rulers, the waters initially act as a kind of medicine for the soul and the body. Sounds nice, right? Well, simultaneously, on the other side, they serve as the ultimate judgment of the spirit. Why? Because as the text notes, their spirits are full of lust. So the physical relief is actually a trap. It's permanently paired with absolute spiritual condemnation.
So you might be wondering, why are they being judged quite so severely? Well, the source text is super clear on this. These earthly kings are facing this horrific punishment because they repeatedly, stubbornly denied the Lord of the spirits. And on top of that, they completely ignored the daily judgments happening right in front of their own eyes, refusing to believe in his name. It's a punishment born completely out of willful ignorance and just relying purely on the lust of their flesh.
And the consequence here is absolute. As the burning of their bodies increases in these waters, their spirits are permanently altered, literally, for all eternity. The text specifically notes that no one will ever speak a vain word before the Lord of the spirits anymore. Their arrogance, their earthly power, all their empty words, they are completely and permanently silenced by this eternal transformation.
Moving on to Section 4, the changing waters and a highly scientific reaction. This process builds what is basically a perfect causal chain. Get this. The temperature of the springs is directly manipulated by the presence and state of the angels. When the angels are condemned in those days, the heat of the fountains changes. They heat up. But when the angels ascend, this water of the fountains changes right back and becomes cold. The environment itself is reacting in real time to the spiritual proceedings happening inside it. It's just a fascinating, completely dynamic ecosystem of justice.
Finally, Section 5, Michael's final warning, where we get to the ultimate meaning of it all.
The absolute crucial takeaway here is that the spectacular cosmic fall of the angels, it was never just about the angels. It was always meant to be a testimony, a stark, flashing warning sign for human hubris. The kings and the powerful of the earth were supposed to look at the fall of these mighty cosmic beings, take a hard look in the mirror, and recognize their own vulnerability and their desperate need for rectitude.
Michael then comes in and reinforces the grand paradox of this entire vision. He explains that these exact waters of judgment are actually a healing for the angels, but they bring absolute death to the bodies of the earthly rulers. Think about that. The very same environment that resolves the cosmic imbalance acts as a fatal mechanism for human corruption.
But tragically, Michael reveals a fatal flaw in human nature. Despite this grand cosmic testimony, and despite the clear mechanics of judgment happening literally all around them, the powerful will still stubbornly refuse to believe. They won't see, and they won't believe that those shifting waters will change and become a fire that burns for eternity. Their denial is so incredibly entrenched that they remain completely blind to the reality of their environment until it just consumes them.
Which brings us to the end of our analysis, and it leaves us with this final, haunting reflection on human arrogance. The text suggests that evidence of consequence is everywhere, yet it's so often ignored by those who are insulated by power. It really begs the question, will leaders ever recognize their own impending ruin, or will they too ignore the changing waters until they finally turn to flame? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this breakdown gave you a clear lens into the mechanics of this ancient fiery prophecy.